Your profitability is really what matters at the end of the day. And so it's important to stop yourself when you're going through that meantime and ask yourself questions like, how much money do you really want to make to reach your lifestyle goals? And how much time do I want my business to consume of my life? Again, these are important questions because, these questions that you're asking, how you answer this question is really going to drive the decisions that you're going to make along the way. I'm so excited. We are in the last 4 months of the year. So we've got some serious tax strategy that's going to be happening this time of year. And we will definitely have an interesting discussion today. And it's a discussion that I actually decided to call The Meantime. And I chose it to call this topic because I think every entrepreneur faces this at some point in their journey. And usually what happens in the entrepreneurship journey is it happens a lot of times when you're close to hitting that milestone. So if you're, close to hitting 7 figures, it happens at 7 figures. If you're a startup business, it's when you're getting ready to bring on your first employee. You're going from $250,000 to $500,000 category there. So it's usually right when you start to hit a major milestone is when you start to feel this impact in the meantime point. And it's interesting because what happens is as entrepreneurs, right, we really desire to scale. There's something alluring about getting bigger, something about crossing a new revenue threshold. And we're really excited about this happening. We can see this happening. We can see sales happening. We can see our team. We can see our processes getting better. But it's interesting because while at the same time, things are getting better and we see this movement towards a target, there's not enough money in the OPEX account, right, to make that next investment. There's not enough money in the OPEX account to hire that person that we really need to take us to that next level, right? And what happens in this meantime is a lot of times as entrepreneurs, we're starting to feel overworked, right? We feel like, oh my gosh, if I get another call, another prospect coming through the door, I don't feel like I can service that, right? Or we look at our teams and you see it in their eyes, right? They look stretched thin. They look maxed out in capacity. And when you're saying, I got a new assignment, you can see their eyes like wanting to dart out of the room, right? Before you give them another assignment. But at the same time, we get these opportunities that are coming through the door. We see our team overworked. There's not enough money, right? There's not enough resources that are available to really resolve this, right? There's not enough money to add that new team member. It's not enough money to invest in that next software or that next machine, right? And so as an entrepreneur, we're feeling this crunch. And normally what happens is I actually see this, and I'm going to share my screen with you for just a minute so you guys can see it too, is we normally see this when there's a significant jump in categories is when we normally see this. As you're crossing one of these categories, you typically start to fill in the meantime. And so what happens is when you're a startup business, right, when you're in category 1, right, and you're in that revenue range of $0 to $250,000, right, and you're seeing yourself wanting to move to category B and you're right on that threshold. Let's say you're at $220,000, right? You haven't crossed over yet. What you're finding is what it took for you to really get started in this category and succeed in this category is really no longer adequate for you to thrive into category B, right? And the reason why is when you were in category 1, you were a sole proprietor, right? You were the one-man show, right? You might have had one employee with you that might have been full-time or part-time, but really at the end of the day, the business revolved around you, right? All you had to do was sell, and then quickly fulfill the orders that you took, right? Again, it was all about you fulfilling that order in category 2. And what happens is, when you're getting into category 2, right, you're not able to use that same skill set that you had in category A to just thrive. You actually need additional skill sets. And what happens in category 2 at 250 to 500,000 is it's not just about sales anymore, right? You've mastered sales in category A, but what's happening is it's all about hiring, right? And it's not just about hiring, it's about hiring A players, right? Because what happens is, and this is the ugly that nobody wants to talk about, not every employee is created equally, right? Not every employee is designed to do the same task or a specific function, right? Every employee is designed differently. And so what happens is in category B, what you're learning is you're learning the art of managing people, right? You're learning to become a manager. You're learning how do I leverage their time, their talents to create the same results that I created in category A, right? And so as a manager, you have to learn how to manage people and manage their time. At the same time, you have to learn to motivate them to want to stay, to want to do a great job. And you have to learn to communicate with your employees in order to maximize that performance. So you're learning category B, what I call the art of crucial conversations, right? You're learning to give that negative feedback, tell them the things that are broken, those things that nobody wants to hear. Sometimes you're learning to keep your mouth shut too, right? Because right now everybody's stressed out. It's not the time to point to that, right? Right now, with something that we need to write down and approach it later, you're really learning to master crucial conversations in category B. And then once you're going from category B to category C, right? Again, you feel that bump, right? You feel that meantime, because again, that same skill set of what you learn in A and B is not enough. It's not adequate to take you into category C, right? Because category C, when you're between $500,000 to $1 million, right? What you're finding is you've got more team, right? You've got more people on your team. And if you don't have standardization and you don't have processes, category C is all about creating systems, right? If you don't have standardization and processes, if you got several people working for you, you're not going to get quality and consistent output, right? Everybody's going to be doing their own thing. And what's going to happen is your results are really a game of chance. And so in category C, when you're between $500,000 to $1 million, you've got team now. It's about creating processes and systems that's going to allow you to create a consistent quality, right? Is what category C is about. And it's interesting because, once you master that in category C, when you're at I'm going to say $900,000, when you are like bumping up against $1 million and you are ready to go to category D, right? What you're finding in category D is, again, it's a different skill set, right? It's a very different skill set that's needed. In category C, you had to learn how to manage people. You had to learn how to motivate employees and learn how to motivate them in ways that they could only be motivated. Because it's just like your children, right? My son, he's motivated by computer time, being able to spend on Roblox. My daughter just wants her cell phone, right? And again, your employees are the same way. They are motivated by different things, right? Some are motivated by becoming masters at their craft, right? And some are motivated by wanting to have a better life or new opportunity, right? And change their legacy. Everybody is motivated by different things. And you learn how to use those motivations. And in category C, you also learn how to prioritize what their unique gift was in category C, meaning that, every employee has a unique gift. And at the same time, they have a unique shortfall too. And so what happens in category C is you learn how to put people into the right place where only they could shine, right? Maybe you don't want this person that's really great at making widgets, doing your accounting, right? And so you learn to kind of put them into the right category in category C. But when you're approaching category D, right, it requires a different skill set, because what happens at category C, when you're at $800,000 in revenue, $900,000 in revenue, what you're finding is, you don't have the bandwidth to juggle it all, right? And when I say category D, I'm talking about that $1 million to $5 million category. And what it means is you've been an amazing manager. You've learned to become an amazing manager because to cross over from category to category D is not a simple thing. Only 4% of entrepreneurs cross that over. And what that means is you've learned how to manage people. You learn how to be amazing at sales. You learn how to market what you do. However, the skill set that you've learned along the way, A, B, and C, are not going to necessarily be the skill set that's needed to become in category D. Because what happens in category D, or when you're approaching category D from category C, is what you're finding yourself is, you're finding yourself in a place where you only have 24 hours in a day, right? Nobody has a single second more. And what you're feeling like as you're approaching category D is you feel like you're giving way more than you're receiving. Okay. And some of you guys will probably tell me that you felt that way. You literally feel like you're giving more than you're receiving. You feel mentally exhausted at the end of the day. And although the money is good, because in category C, you can easily be making $500,000, right? Because 50% is owner's benefit. At the end of the day, what you're finding is you're making so many decisions and you're juggling, right? Because you're still in control of sales. You're still in control of managing people. You're still in control of fulfillment. But what's happening is you're literally mentally exhausted as you approach category D from category C. And so in category D, what happens in category D is you have to learn to raise up and bring in mid-tier managers and supervisors, right? You have to learn to really be able to learn to raise up people that you can trust, that they can make day-to-day decisions without everything having to come through you, because you have to empower your people, your managers, and your supervisors in category D. You have to learn to put people in places that you can trust that they are going to make the right decisions, right? You're going to be looking at authority limits. So meaning that, I approve all expenses for you up to $1,000 if you're in category D. Every decision doesn't have to run through me in category D. In some cases, you're allowing them to enter into smaller contracts without you necessarily being involved in category D. And what happens is you have to trust their ability, the people that you're bringing on as managers in category D, to be able to deliver high quality products or services that traditionally you've been the one that's been responsible for carrying that torch, right? And so that's what happens in category D. Here, you're having to rely on that manager that has that ability at the same time of making decisions when you're not there to motivate and manage your employees. And really what you're doing is you're starting to replace yourself from the day-to-day decisions is what's happening there. And again, when you're in that beginning of that category between C and D, right? And let's say you're at close to $1 million and you're bringing in 50% because that's the owner's benefit at that category. What you may find is as you cross tiers, right, your tap percentages change, right? And the tap percentages change as you cross tiers because the needs are different. And so in this case, what might happen is as you're bringing in that mid-tier manager, right, that operations person, they may be $150,000 in salary for them to be in that position. And so that's the reason why that operating expense is going up, is to allow you to bring in that person that's going to allow you to scale to that next level. And what happens to that on that other side is because your percentages are changing, what you might find yourself in a place is you might actually be bringing in less money, right? Because if you're bringing in $500,000 at the top of your category in C, you may only be bringing in $350,000 at $1,001 when you're in category D, right? But again, these percentages are changing because they're allowing you to strategically bring in that higher level person that you need to make those decisions in category D. Each category has its challenges, right? They say new level equals new devil, right? You guys have all heard that before. And so today, what I want to do is I want to talk about how do you manage when you're approaching that next tier, right? If you haven't quite made it there, I want to talk about how do you manage that uncomfortability? How do you manage that squeeze, right? Where we needed somebody yesterday, but our money is really tight. OPEX doesn't allow it. It doesn't fit into our tap tiers. How do you manage that meantime in order to get relief for your team as well as for yourself? And today, what I want to do is I want to give you guys some ideas and some suggestions about what to think about and perhaps implement while you travel across the meantime, right? Because literally that's what you're doing is you're traveling across the meantime when you're doing this. So first of all, the meantime, it is a difficult place, right? It is not an easy place for anybody to be in the meantime. I have personally been in the meantime many, many times. And I can tell you this, I've hated it every single time that I've been in the meantime. It is literally not an easy time for anybody. And I think as entrepreneurs, nobody wants to be in the meantime. It's a terrible place to be in, when you're crossing those percentages. However, as entrepreneurs, it's difficult because, we're used to running through the phases, right? We're used to being in control. We want to be in control. And a lot of us, we want that accelerated growth. We want that hyper scaling. We want to anticipate our next growth. We want to be in control of things. But sometimes when we grow too fast, right? When we put into place things and we bring on staff that we really can't afford yet, right? What can happen is, if we rush through it, if we force that growth prematurely, what can happen a lot of times, especially if we're making investments in things that we don't really have money for, is we can experience debt, right? We can experience debt and we can experience losses if we don't properly control that growth. And so that meantime is any point in our entrepreneurship travel where we needed somebody yesterday, right? We needed that help. We needed that investment and that new infrastructure and that new equipment, but we just didn't have the money in OPEX. Like I said, we've all been there. And if you've not been there yet, lucky you, but you will get there as just part of the entrepreneur journey. So today, let's talk about the meantime and let's talk about some suggestions for the meantime. So first of all, when I think about traversing through the meantime, I love that word traversing, like traveling through time, right? That meantime. Sometimes I'm like, I wish I can just skip 5 years ahead, right? Or skip this moment. When you're traversing through the meantime, it's important to know, first of all, before you even start, is what does winning look like for you personally? That's probably the most important question you can ask yourself when you're going through the meantime. And I think as entrepreneurs, it's so easy as an entrepreneur to get seduced by that concept of scaling. Everybody is talking about growing to be 7 figures, multi 7 figures, right? And it's a word that's thrown out there like this is the ultimate goal. But it's interesting because a lot of times people don't stop and think about what are the other things that they want in life? What are the things that are really important to them? And the reason why this is so important is because there's so many ways to get to the same bottom line. There's so many ways to get to the same outcome. And although a 7-figure business sounds alluring, right? Everybody wants it and it's a great thing to have. There are many ways of reaching that same bottom line, regardless if you're 7 figures or not. You can actually reach that same bottom line, right? It's all about product mix, service mix, right? In order to reach that. And I always tell people, top line revenue, it's a vanity number. It is a vanity number in many cases. And what really is important is profitability. Your profitability is really what matters at the end of the day. And so it's important to stop yourself when you're going through that meantime and ask yourself questions like, how much money do I really want to make at the end of the day? And how much time do I want my business to consume in my life? Those are the questions that you want to ask. And I'm going to say it again. How much money do you really want to make to reach your lifestyle goals? And how much time do I want my business to consume in my life? Again, these are important questions because, these questions that you're asking, how you answer this question is really going to drive the decisions that you're going to make along the way, right? Like, how much money do you really want to make? And how much time do you want to put into this? And not only are these going to drive the decisions that you're going to make, but it's also going to drive the strategy that you're going to have to take in order to get there. So sit down with it, sit down and think about these questions and figure it out. How much money do you want to make at the end of the day? And how much time do you want your business to consume your life? And what's your desired lifestyle? And when I say lifestyle, what do you want your life to look like? Do you want a 40-hour work week? Do you want a 50-hour work week? Or do you want a 3-day work week? What do you want really from your life from a lifestyle standpoint? And then what I want you to do is I want you to determine the shortest route to achieve this. Okay. And I really emphasize that word, the shortest route, because I meet so many entrepreneurs. They're so focused on scaling. They're so focused on like reaching 7 figures, multi 7 figures, that they are willing to trade margins for value. And when I say willing to trade margins for value, what I mean is they're willing to drop their costs, sell at a lower price so that they make lower margins in order to reach a revenue number, right? And so what's happening is they're playing a pricing game. And in fact, what's happening is they're choosing to work twice as hard for the same outcome, right? Because if you cut your margins, you have to work twice as hard to get that same profit, right? And I hope that's not anybody here. And so again, what I'm recommending is create a strategy using the shortest route to obtain your desired income and lifestyle choice, the shortest route. Stop taking the hard way by trading volume for margins. That is the hard way. That is the way to entrepreneur poverty. And we don't want anybody to experience that. And if you find that you can't be profitable at your current level, creating more volume is not going to solve the problem. It's not going to solve your profit issue, because if you're experiencing losses and negative, that just begets more losses and negative, right? You can't keep adding negatives and hoping that it turns to positive, right? This is not multiplication here. It's just creating more negative. So you don't want to trade margins for value. You want to make sure that you are consistently profitable, right? As you grow and scale. The next thing that I would look at is, how can I continue to obtain more clients? So how do I continue to grow with more clients or customers while not creating additional overhead or fixed costs? Okay. I'm going to say that one more time. How can I continue to obtain more clients or customers without taking on additional overhead or fixed costs? And when I say fixed costs are costs that you're committed to pay regardless of your volume and revenue. Okay. They're things that you're contractually bound to. So there's a contract typically in place. And fixed costs are things like your rent, right? When you sign that office lease, it's for 1 year, 3 years, 5 years or more, right? It's that mortgage. That mortgage isn't going to go away once you sign it. It's those contractual obligations. It's those full-time employees that you have to bring on payroll, that you have to pay them whether they are billable or not billable, whether they're chargeable, whether they're working on projects or not. You have an obligation to pay them. And fixed costs are anything that ties up your resources in an inflexible way. And what you want to do is, when you are in the meantime, what you want to do is you want to analyze, how do I grow my revenue without increasing my fixed costs, is what you want to do. And what you want to think about is, how can I correlate an increase in revenue with a constant ratio of variable costs? Okay. And when I say variable costs, what I mean is it's a cost that's incurred in congruency to an increase in revenue. So there's usually a variable cost ratio. For example, if I have $1 of sales, it costs me 30 cents to produce that. My variable cost is 30 cents, right? So every time I sell something, it's going to cost me an additional 30 cents for every dollar that I make. And what I'm doing is I'm fixing that variable cost ratio. And what's happening is variable costs are costs that are only incurred when there's an increase in sales volume. An example of variable costs would be an example of commission-based sales payments. So if I have a sales team and they are paid only on commission, meaning they're only paid when they make a sale, this person may be a 1099 person, but again, they're only paid when they achieve a sale. So in effect, what I've done with a commission salesperson, as I increase my revenue, what's happening is I'm increasing my variable costs in correlation with that. So I'm not taking on additional expenses without incurring revenue. There's a dollar for like a 30 cents to a dollar ratio, right? Depending on what we're talking about here is what I'm doing. So again, what I'm doing is I'm correlating an increase in variable costs with an increase in sales. Another example of this might be, I might be looking for a contractor to partner with, right? And in this case with this contractor, I'm only paying this contractor when they are contracted to do a particular job. So I don't have somebody sitting on my payroll waiting for the job to come in, right? Or to get an order. I'm only bringing people in as I have a need. And so, a lot of times people will say, well, if I depend on contractors, sometimes they're not reliable. They may not be there when I need them, right? And so what I suggest in that case is build a network of contractors that you can pull from, right? Build that network of people that are around that you can bring on when you need them. And again, the goal here is to correlate the increase in revenue or sales with the fixed variable cost. Again, I'm only bringing contract labor when I have projects that I can assign them. So again, I'm incurring the additional fixed variable costs when I incur the revenue. I don't have expenses that don't correlate directly with sales is what's happening. The other way to do this is finding part-time hourly employees, right? Is another way to correlate increasing sales volume with increasing costs. Because again, I can bring on a part-time employee and they're only paid when they're doing chargeable work, right? I'm only bringing them in when I have projects for them to do. And again, what's happening is I'm focusing on correlating that additional revenue with my variable costs. And again, it's just focusing that additional revenue with that fixed variable cost is what we want to do. And again, what we're doing is we're holding down those profit margins, right? We're keeping the profit margin absolutely the same as what we're doing. Now, the next thing that I would consider doing is how do I create higher profit margins, right? Higher profit margins, higher spread between my revenue that I charge and the cost it takes for me to produce that within the current products and services that I'm offering. So I'm not reinventing the wheel here. I'm just creating higher profit margins is what I'm doing. And by this, what I mean is how do you create additional revenue without necessarily increasing expenses? And how do I add simple services that don't require a lot of resources, right? An example that I think about is, I like my local car wash, right? My car, when I leave it outside, it gets dusty. And I have a local car wash that I like going to. And it's not a fancy car wash. It's an automated car wash, right? It's one of those ones that you drive through, you're done in 2 minutes. It's super quick, super reliable. Usually they don't get tangled on my bike rack when I go through this car wash. And this car wash, it has a mid-tier package. And this mid-tier package is about $5 more than the low-end car wash. And what they say is one of the things that they're going to do is they're going to make sure that my car shines when I leave. They're going to spray a shine coat on my car. And again, it's about $5 more for this mid-tier package. And it's interesting because I bet it doesn't cost my car wash that much money to give me the shine coating, and it probably doesn't cost them really anything. And in fact, they may be adding it to all the other ones and we just don't know it. But in fact, for me as a consumer, this shine package is $5 more. It doesn't take much more time for me to get a shine coat, right? I'm still out of the car wash in the same 2 minutes than if I didn't get the shine coated, right? And it's interesting because now what happens is my car wash earned an additional $5 for the same 2 minutes that I spent in the car wash, an extra $5 without materially increasing their costs. And so the question is, how can you increase your margins, right? Your sales price, right? And offer additional offerings, right? Without increasing your costs. How do you build in more margins? What are the add-ons that you can do or the value add services that you can add to your current product or services to increase those margins even more? And then the other thing I like to think about is, looking back at it as I like to look at how do I make my current processes more efficient? I am notorious for walking around the office and asking one of our team members, hey, can I just observe your process for a while? I'm just curious, how do you do this? And what I'm doing is I'm looking for redundancy. I'm looking for things that I can potentially eliminate in the process. And so my question is, what are the redundancies in your process? What are softwares that you're currently subscribing to that are redundant softwares of other things that you already own, right? What can you eliminate in your process? What services are you offering that nobody appreciates or attends? And then cut these things out because they don't add value and they cost, right? They cost time, they cost money, right? Eliminate these things. And then the last thing that I like to do in the meantime is, I like to look for opportunities to automate and to outsource. Okay. And I'll give you an example. As an accountant, you guys have probably seen the joke about the accountant and coming to the accountant's office. As an accountant, my life can easily become overrun with paper. You guys have seen like those pictures of the accountants with like paper up to here on both sides of them, right? For me, one day I decided that I was going to eliminate all paper from my life. And I was going to embrace Zen, and I was going to be kind to nature. Now, I'm going to be honest with you. I have not been able to eliminate 100% of the paper from my life. I've tried. I haven't been able to eliminate it, but I have eliminated quite a bit of it. And what happens now is I no longer have crates of paper shipped to me every single week because I have eliminated paper, right? And in the past, we used to spend a ton of money, not just on paper, but on printer toner also. We even tried generic ink. But now we use Adobe. And what happens with Adobe is we type on Adobe as if it's paper, right? And I actually use my iPad in order to keep notes. And so what's happening is I'm no longer buying bulk notepads and scanning those notes in. We've invested in dual monitors. So all of our team has at least 2 monitors. Some of them have 3. And what's happened is we've eliminated paper significantly in our company. Instead of mailing, we used to mail a lot of things back and forth. Now we use a portal and we use DocuSign. And what's happened is we've eliminated costs associated with the postage. And so what happens is we don't have the post office fees and the FedEx charges that we used to incur because we now do everything more electronic is what we do. So entrepreneurs, what I'm saying is, what can you automate or reduce costs for? What can you automate or reduce costs for? And if you have a competitor, right, and that competitor can do things faster than you, right, and they can do it at least the same quality as you, consider a relationship that's commission-based, or you can just mark up as you partner with them, right? So what's happening is you're white labeling their work. And now what happens when you're white labeling, right, where you're using the resources of your competitor, right, is you don't have to worry about building team and scaling, right? You can just focus on sales. You can focus on your zone of genius and focus on what you did well in category A, which you probably really loved on your TAP journey, while having your competitor worry about scaling and team and figuring out their process because you're white labeling under theirs now. So those are just some of my suggestions that I have on how to navigate the meantime as you move through those top percentages categories that we've set for you. I hope that today was extremely helpful. Until next time, may the profits be with you.